Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Panovski. I'm President and CEO of UBX Cloud. The topic of discussion is a little bit of an adjustment from the previous topic of how cloud helps small business. But this topic is essentially how the cloud can help enterprise and corporate IT. And to kind of kick off this discussion, I guess one of the most important things is kind of to define what cloud means. It's a very nebulous term. It's used in network engineering diagrams and discussions, and it's also used in marketing and other kinds of nomenclature. But for the purposes of, from a cloud service provider standpoint and this discussion, the cloud is simply just someone else's computer. And when you're looking at evaluating whether or not a cloud solution is applicable for your enterprise, it's important to consider all the components that are a part of that. So when you're looking at the building blocks, these core technologies that are the items that are required to complete your application deployments, to make your data accessible to your teams and to your company, to make your enterprise resource planning systems online and running and highly available. You need a bill of material of servers. You need a data room with proper cooling and power. You need server infrastructure that needs to be purchased. You need software that needs to be licensed. You need experts that need to configure it. And you need consultants to secure it. And you need a lot of outside and inside blood, sweat, and tears to get these systems architected and stood up. And the cloud, in the sense that it's someone else's computer, has shifted the model in the past 15 years, where instead of having to go through this process of approvals and configuration, you can just spin up infrastructure on someone else's computer in someone else's cloud and run whatever workloads that makes the most sense for your business in those environments. And one of the simplest, just victorious gains off the bat is going to be the fact that these can be deployed very rapidly. In a large enterprise environment, the CapEx approval process can be incredibly significant. You have to get a bill of material, a consulting engagement, a piece of software approved. You have to get documentation filled out. It's got to go through multiple layers of reviews and approvals. And then once it's approved, you're given a purchase order. That purchase order has to go to a vendor. That vendor has to fulfill their piece of the puzzle. And hopefully by the end of the project, you've got everything that you need and the people that you need, and hope all goes well. That process takes time. And a lot of times, enterprise has to react very quickly. And these obstacles in the way make that very challenging and very difficult. So the cloud helps accelerate that. The cloud helps convert that capital expenditure over to an operating expenditure. You don't need an approval when your electricity bill increases or your gas bill increases. You can simply, just attach their credit card to the account and have it pay, or go through your regular means. There's not a whole lot of approval when it comes to those items because they're operating expenditures and they don't require those kinds of approvals. So from a purely paperwork and bureaucratic sense, it simplifies things. You need a lot of cloud resources to run a particular application or to expand a system that you're currently using. You simply just go to a cloud provider and you just increase your capacity. Your bill will increase. You're paying by the drink, essentially. You're paying for the consumption that you're using, and it's a very fair model. And it eliminates a lot of the complexity in managing these environments because all those layers of infrastructure, networking, and storage are kind of already taken care of for you. You just bring your own business outcome, right? So what UBX does and what other cloud providers do is, they provide that landing pad for you where you can run that infrastructure and those services. There is a difference between public cloud and private cloud. So, someone else's computer, but in a private setting and in a public setting. Public cloud providers would be like Amazon with their AWS and Microsoft with their Azure platform. They're public clouds. So Microsoft is renting space out of data centers all over the world, And they have these servers that are sitting in that data center, and you can log in with a credit card and you can start building servers. The difference between public clouds and private clouds is essentially the responsibility. So in public clouds with like Amazon and Microsoft Azure, they're simply responsible for ensuring that that server is accessible in that console for you. They're not responsible for the software licensing. They're not responsible for the management of those servers. They're not responsible for even the data on those servers. You know, their shared responsibility models are very clear in the fact that you're getting, you know, these particular compute, storage, and networking resources, and if you don't back it up, protect it, or configure it properly, tough noogies. It's your problem. So enterprise have to invest in their internal staffing, invest in outside consultants, invest in specialized software to kind of complete the package there for that particular engagement with a public cloud provider. UBX is a private cloud provider, and we're kind of taking the good elements of public cloud and we're adding all those gaps that need filling that enterprises really could use some assistance with. So our private cloud and other private cloud models are the same utility model, you know, pay by the drink, but we kind of fit ourselves in the picture of what's needed from a subject matter expertise standpoint. UBX Cloud provides not only the experts, but the software licensing required for that environment to run. Microsoft Windows Server licenses, VMware licensing, Veeam backup and replication licensing, and we manage those systems as well, or co-manage them depending on the engagement. So when a customer is purchasing a utility from a private cloud provider like UBX, you're getting a single price that's very predictable, but you're getting all those other things in there that you're going to need to kind of pay for anyway and factor in. And by delivering our experts, our software, our infrastructure as a utility, you know, it's very easy for businesses to scale and become elastic. You know, a good example would be a transportation company, a regional transportation company is looking at expanding. They purchase a lot of smaller transportation companies outside of their state, and you know, they want to gain a foothold in the West Coast transportation business. They acquire all these companies, and now they want to absorb these companies into their existing platforms, and they need a lot of capacity to do that in a very short period of time. With private cloud, they can dial that up, and they know exactly what their costs are going to be, whether it's 1,000 users or 15,000 users. And the scale of that capacity scale is incremental with the type of usage that's needed. So it provides a lot of business agility with the different types of workloads that are going to be running in your environment. These technologies are the foundational building blocks that you know, are required day in and day out. You know, data is the new oil, and you know, as your company grows, as it evolves and expands product lines, you know, these things are really important to take care of. The cloud also offers a lot of inherent security that would be very challenging or very costly to provide on a private basis inside a client's environment, inside their buildings or their headquarters. I like to call this the coffee maker effect, just because it's kind of an easy demonstration and actually happened in one of our environments or one of our client engagements. But you know, you could have the best server infrastructure in the world with the best security and the best cooling and the best power inside of your building. But if behind that building that you're renting is another customer who, another tenant in that building who left their coffee maker on at night and didn't shut it off, and that coffee maker overheated and caught on fire, it doesn't matter what safeguards you put in place inside of your unit or your data room, it's going to burn down, or the coffee maker is going to cause significant damage and downtime. And unfortunately, for a large enterprise, that means a lot of a significant loss in money and operational uptime. So In the cloud, your server workloads are inside a tier 2 or a tier 3 purpose-built data center. These buildings are designed from the ground up. They have redundant power, redundant cooling. They are designed to hold incredibly critical systems, and they have proper connectivity, proper cooling, proper perimeter security, and there's no coffee maker to burn the place down, essentially. And from an architecture standpoint, from a networking architecture standpoint and a systems architecture standpoint, the cloud makes it much simpler to secure an environment because you kind of have a full understanding of where your environment begins and ends inside of a private cloud or a public cloud. Whereas when you have these things inside of your own buildings, inside of your own networks, there tends to be a lot of sprawl, and there tends to be some architecture and design mistakes that kind of bubble to the surface as business needs change. The cloud allows for environments to be easily torn down and removed with a few clicks, and created and built in the same amount of time. So these kinds of challenges aren't really that apparent when it comes to architecting these environments, because in most cases, private clouds in particular are secure by design. Now, public clouds, there is room for error. There's a lot of, because you're putting the responsibility on the person who's on the other side of that console, there can be mistakes that are made with misconfigurations, or allowing certain kinds of traffic that you probably shouldn't allow, or just general mistakes. In a private cloud, in an engagement with a company like UBX, there's going to be those experts behind you that will watch while you're making these changes. And we call ourselves like the internet janitors. Like, we're looking and we're making sure that that there's nothing egregiously wrong here, or that you're not deviating from best practices. And our engineers go to work to make sure that your data is not only in this private cloud, but also being copied or replicated across to a different environment, an environment that's air gap, that's separate, that has no touch points into the primary environment. And we have a genuine interest and care for not only your uptime, but your business continuity. And it's much easier to contain and manage and protect an environment when it's all cloud or in a multi-cloud environment. Moving into kind of the cyber security discussion here, having that visibility in a cloud environment provides additional insight and touch points that are a lot more challenging to do when you're on-premise environment. The cyber landscape is essentially turning the information technology profession into a war, and the people that are fighting this war are intelligent adversaries that are incentivized financially to break into your networks, and they're looking for those misconfigurations. They're looking for those holes and gaps in your architecture and your environment, and by moving and shifting your on-premise environments to a cloud model, particularly a private cloud, proper architecture will aid in proper role-based access control is much easier to control in that kind of an environment versus an on-premise environment. And I feel like UBX really has this done. We do this in the right ways, because when we create these environments and we architect them, we're architecting them with a security-first approach. We don't want Ivan ransomware to be knocking on the door and infecting your environment. We're incentivized to keep your environment online, up, available, highly available, and protecting it. So having these data protection mechanisms are great, but we don't want to let these bad guys through the door anyway. And we've invested in technologies and created technologies in our 14-year tenure that help protect our environment that even a lot of large enterprise would not be able to afford on their own. Like, there's just the cost would just be too great to invest into these technologies. And we kind of carve that off as a part of our utility, as a part of our cell phone plan like billing. So if you're a small to medium enterprise, or if you're a very large enterprise, you're getting the kind of protection whether you're consuming 1,000 cores and 10 terabytes in our environment, or a petabyte and 1,000,000 cores. So your engagement will scale, and you get the protections that would be potentially out of your reach at a very digestible cell phone like kind of plan. So I hope that kind of helps getting an understanding of how the cloud helps enterprise from the lens of cloud services provider. And I'm very hopeful to, hopefully this will raise some questions that will prompt some additional discussions. Appreciate it very much. Again, I'm Stephen Panovski, President and CEO of UBX Cloud, and that was how cloud helps enterprise.